The prison smelled of rust and ozone, the way metal did after it had tasted blood. Chains rattled in the dim corridor as guards dragged Colonel Elias Kane into the chamber. His wrists were shackled, his uniform torn, one eye darkened by a bruise. He moved with the steady gait of a man who'd marched through worse than this, though his captors thought the cuffs made him weak. The chamber was an amphitheater, tears rising like teeth around a pit. Dozens of alien officers filled the seats, their forms gleaming under cold blue light. Some had plated hides, others translucent skin or tentacular crests, but all bore the insignia of the Zorith Dominion, the empire that had ground Earth into ash. At the center stood the dais. There, projected in brutal clarity, played the footage Earth's last stand. Explosions rippled across ruined cities, humanity's defenses crumbling under endless waves of Dominion war machines. Alien commentators narrated with disdain, their voices echoing through the chamber. Observe the humans' futility. They hurled themselves against inevitability. They fought like cornered vermin, thrashing until the end. A chorus of mocking laughter filled the hall. Kane said nothing. He stood tall, letting their words wash over him, his silence heavier than any retort. One of the guards sneered, yanking his chains. Say something, human. Defend your species if you can. Kane raised his bruised face, his voice calm, gravel in his throat. You mistake silence for shame. But I am not silent because we lost. I am silent because I remember every name behind those flames. The chamber stilled, the laughter dying. Mockery in the chamber. The Dominion's supreme commander, Lord Varith, leaned forward from the highest tier. His frame was tall and angular, eyes burning like molten gold beneath his crested helm. His voice was smooth, cruel. You humans burn brightly, yes, but briefly. A candle flaring before the void. That is what you are, flickered than ash. Murmurs of approval rippled among the officers. Kane's lips curved in the faintest of smiles. Funny! For all your firepower, you still show these recordings. Again and again. You call us vermin, yet you can't stop watching the moment we made you bleed. The words hit like a blade. Officers hissed, some rising from their seats. Lord Varith's smile faltered. Arrogant to the end. No, Kane said, eyes hard as steel. Accurate to the end. The footage turns. The projection shifted to one of Earth's bloodiest battles, the Siege of Mumbai. Dominion Titans leveled towers, while human infantry swarmed their armored legs, strapping charges even as the air burned. One soldier, flames licking his body, leapt into the chest of a Titan with a live detonator. The blast tore both apart. The aliens jeered. Madness. Utter madness. Kane's voice cut through their noise, steady and sharp. That wasn't madness. That was sacrifice. That was a soldier buying 10 more seconds for evac transports to lift children into the sky. You call it chaos. I call it clarity. A silence spread. Even those who hated him leaned forward, unwilling to admit they wanted to hear more. The commander's test. Varith rose, descending from his throne tier to the floor. His presence silenced the chamber. He stood taller than Kane by a head, armored robes trailing behind him. You speak well, prisoner, Varith said, voice echoing in the vast hall. But words are dust. Kneel, and I will grant your people the mercy of irrelevance. Refuse, and I will end you here, a forgotten ember. Chains clattered as guards forced Kane to his knees. The chamber roared with laughter. But Kane straightened, the iron links biting his skin, forcing his broken body upright until he stood again. His voice carried like a war drum. We didn't ask for your mercy. And humanity will never kneel. The chamber froze. The moment of shock. For a long breath, only silence filled the hall. Then, unexpectedly, Varys stopped. His golden eyes narrowed, studying Kane not as an insect but as an equal. Slowly, deliberately, he lowered himself onto one knee. Gasps erupted from the tiers. Officers shouted in outrage, disbelief twisting their voices. Varith's words were low but heavy. Strength I understand. Defiance I respect. Perhaps Perhaps your kind is not finished after all. Every alien in the chamber stared, some in fury, others in awe. The prisoner who had come to be mocked now stood as the symbol of something unbreakable. Kane's chains hung heavy, but his eyes burned with the fire of 1,000 dead comrades. He had not come here to beg. He had come here to remind the galaxy of what humanity was, a flame that would not die. The chamber did not erupt into cheers or applause. It imploded into chaos. Lord Varys still knelt, golden eyes fixed on Elias Kane as if seeing not a prisoner, but a mirror of something long forgotten. Around them, Dominion officers shouted over one another, their voices a storm of outrage. Some demanded Varys rise at once, denouncing weakness. Others, shaken, whispered of what they had just witnessed, the humans' refusal to kneel even under chains. Kane stood silent in the center, wrists raw from the shackles. He did not need to move. The chamber was already shifting around him, its foundation cracking. Fractures in the ranks. A scaled officer with ridged horns slammed his gauntlet against the tier railing. Supreme Commander! You disgraced the Dominion by kneeling before prey. His voice carried the weight of doctrine, yet trembled at its edges. Varys rose slowly, his gaze cutting like a blade. Disgrace? Or recognition? I have crushed countless species. None stood unbroken when given the choice of life in chains or death. But this human, shackled, beaten, bloodied, he still stands. Tell me, Commander, if that is weakness, what does that make us? The chamber faltered. The officer who had spoken first snarled but did not reply. Kane's lips curved faintly. They don't even see it, they're afraid, not of me, but of what I represent. The prisoner speaks. Kane broke his silence, his voice calm yet heavy. You mock Earth's fall as if it proved your supremacy. But you keep showing these battles, don't you? You replay the moments where humanity fought hardest. Not because they prove your strength. Because they remind you of ours. Dozens of eyes, slitted, multifaceted, burning, turned toward him. You call us reckless. Yet you still fear us enough to drag me here in chains and display my people's last breaths as warnings. You don't play those recordings to shame us. You play them to reassure yourselves. The words slashed through the air. No one laughed. Hidden support. Among the tiers, some Dominion officials shifted uneasily. A tall alien with crystalline tendrils leaned to another, whispering. Kane caught fragments. Unbroken, dangerous, could be useful. It was enough. Cracks were forming, not just in their discipline, but in their belief. Varith's voice carried over the chamber. Hear this, all of you. The human is no mere captive. He is proof. Proof that even in ashes, humanity does not bend. You can kill them, but you cannot own them. The statement detonated across the ranks. Some erupted in fury, others in stunned silence. A test of allegiance. The horned officer from before vaulted the railing, dropping into the pit where Kane stood. His armor hissed with steam, his blade humming with energy. He pointed it at Kane's chest. If you respect vermin, Supreme Commander, then let the vermin prove his worth. Here. Now. The chamber roared approval, blood demanded blood. Varith's eyes narrowed, but he did not intervene. Instead, he turned his gaze to Kane. Will you meet the challenge, human? Kane flexed his wrists, the chains biting deep. Take these off. The officer sneered. You'll beg for them back before long. The guards hesitated, looking to Varith. A slight nod was all it took. The shackles fell away, clattering against the floor like broken verdicts. Duel in the pit. The officer lunged, blades slashing downward. Kane twisted aside, the edge grazing his ribs, heat searing his torn uniform. He grabbed a length of chain from the ground, wrapping it around his fists. The chamber became a coliseum. Cheers, jeers, hisses, all crashing together. Kane ducked another strike, the chain snapping against the officer's armored throat. Sparks flew. The alien staggered but swung back with brutal force, the impact slamming Kane into the wall. Pain flared across his shoulder, but he pushed off, driving forward with every ounce of fury left in him. He hammered the chain into the alien's exposed jaw joint once, twice. The third strike cracked bone. The officer reeled. Kane didn't hesitate. He coiled the chain around the officer's weapon arm, yanked it forward, and drove ahead but straight into the alien's snout. Blood sprayed. The chamber went silent as the officer collapsed, weapons skittering away. Kane stood over him, chest heaving, blood dripping down his own brow. He looked up, chain still in hand. "Still think we kneel?" The commander's choice. Vareth descended the last steps into the pit, his golden eyes locked on Kane. The chamber held its breath. The Supreme Commander placed one clawed hand on his chest, then bowed, not in mockery, but in acknowledgement. Gasps echoed like thunder. Officers shouted, some in rage, some in awe. The kneeling had been shocking. But this, a bow before a human, was heresy. Vareth's voice was calm, deliberate. "This human is not a prisoner. He is a soldier. And until every Dominion officer here learns why soldiers like him are dangerous, none of you are fit to command against humanity." The split. The chamber erupted into chaos, but not with mockery this time, with division. Some cried treason, demanding Vareth stripped of power. Others whispered of strategy. If humans could not be broken, perhaps they could be allied, or at least weaponized. Kane stood in the center, breathing hard, blood dripping, chains hanging from his fists. He realized then, he had done more than survive. He had planted fear where arrogance had ruled. But he also saw the danger. The Dominion wasn't united anymore. And a fractured enemy could be even deadlier than one bound together. Cliffhanger. Guards surged forward again, but this time not in unison. Some moved to seize Kane. Others hesitated, eyes flicking to Vareth, uncertain. The Supreme Commander turned, his voice ringing above the chaos. "Take him to my war council. He will not rot in a cell. He will teach us what it means to stand unbroken." The chamber exploded in outrage, voices colliding like blades. And Elias Kane, chained soldier of a fallen earth, understood. He was no longer just a prisoner. He was a catalyst. The galaxy's balance had begun to tilt, and soon, it would shatter. The chamber had emptied in a storm of anger and whispers. Some officers stormed away, vowing to strip Lord Vareth of his command. Others lingered, unsettled, drawn toward the impossible sight of a human standing unbroken in their war council. The fracture had begun, and in the fracture, Elias Kane saw his opening. He sat at the edge of a long obsidian table within Vareth's private war hall. His wrists were still raw where the shackles had cut, but he was no longer bound. Across from him, Dominion generals argued in heated bursts, their voices thick with contempt. "This is heresy," snarled one with crystalline ridges down his neck. "A prisoner elevated to council? If word spreads, the Dominion's grip will unravel." Another, with mandibles clicking, retorted, "Or it strengthens us. A weapon that refuses to break must be studied, perhaps used. Do you not see? The human's defiance can be sharpened into a blade." Kane listened, silent, letting their words flow around him. He knew the truth. These weren't debates about him. They were debates about power, fear, and control. Humanity had always been more than their enemies were willing to admit, and now the admission was being dragged from them by his very presence. The council fractures. Lord Vareth raised a hand, and the arguments cut short. His voice was low but carried with iron weight. "You speak of control, of study, of containment. Yet not one of you can deny what you witnessed. A chained soldier defied not only this chamber but me, and lived. Do you truly not understand what that means?" The crystalline officer hissed. "It means he should already be ash." Vareth's gaze sharpened. "It means humanity cannot be erased with fire. To crush them is to forge them harder. That is why the Dominion's war drags on. That is why we bleed despite our fleets." The hall grew still. No one dared answer. Kane finally leaned forward, his voice calm but cutting. "You've been fighting us wrong from the start. You thought breaking our cities would break our spirit. But humans don't draw strength from walls. We draw it from each other. Burn our homes, we fight in the ruins. Kill our leaders, we rise as thousands. You think the war ended with Earth? That was only the beginning. Every eye turned toward him. Some burned with hatred, others with reluctant recognition. The ultimatum. One general stood abruptly, robes sweeping the floor. This is folly. If you continue down this path, Supreme Commander, I will call for your removal. And as for the human, he jabbed a claw at Cain, I will see his head mounted on the spire gates. Varitha's golden eyes narrowed. Then mount it yourself. The challenge hung like a blade. The general faltered, then stormed from the hall, muttering curses. Cain spoke into the silence left behind. He's not the last. You kneel, you bow, and now your empire fractures. They'll come for you, Varith. And when they do, you'll have to decide what side you're truly on. Varith studied him, something unreadable flickering in his expression. And what side are you on, human? Cain held his gaze. The side that refuses extinction. Revelation. The war table flickered, projecting the galaxy in sharp relief. Red Dominion banners marked system after system, spreading like rot. But among them, faint pulses of blue light blinked, resistance cells, remnants of humanity scattered among the stars. Cain's heart clenched as he recognized old codes, signals he thought long extinguished. You kept them alive, Cain whispered. Varith inclined his head. Not out of mercy. Out of calculation. Even as I crushed your fleets, I saw the truth. Extinction of your kind was not victory. It was a wound to the Dominion itself. And now, with the galaxy in flames from rebellion and betrayal, humanity may be the fire we require to survive. Cain's fists clenched. You burned our world and now you want to use us as your kindling? No, Varys said. I want to unleash you. The test. Before Cain could answer, the chamber doors burst open. The horned officer he had defeated earlier strode in, flanked by soldiers. His jaw was bandaged, his pride more wounded than his body. This charade ends now, he roared. The human dies here, and you with him if you stand in the way, Commander. Cain rose, chains still wrapped around his fist. His ribs ached, his muscles burned, but his eyes blazed. You didn't learn the first time. Want me to teach you again? The officer snarled, drawing his blade. You are nothing but defiance made flesh. And flesh always breaks. Varys stepped aside. His voice was cold. Then break him, if you can. The duel ignited in the war hall. Steel clashed, sparks lit the air. Cain ducked under the first swing, chain whipping across the officer's throat. The alien ripped free, blade grazing Cain's shoulder, but the human pressed forward, unrelenting. Every strike, every counter, was fueled not by survival but by memory. The comrades lost, the cities burned, the children ferried under fire. Finally Cain fainted left, then slammed the chain across the officer's legs, dragging him down. In a heartbeat he had the blade, its energy humming in his grip. He leveled it at the officer's throat. Still think humanity kneels? The hall was silent. The officer's eyes burned with hatred, but he did not move. Cain let the blade fall with a hiss, inches from his neck, searing the floor. Learn. Or die next time. The turning point. Varys stepped forward, voice ringing through the hall. You see now? This is what the Dominion has failed to understand. Fear cannot erase humanity. Only respect can contain them. And if you refuse respect, then prepare for your empire to fall. Cain looked around the hall. Half the officers glared, ready to brand him a curse. The other half stared as if witnessing a weapon too dangerous to ignore. The fracture was no longer hidden, it was open, raw, undeniable. He turned to Varith. You think you can wield us? But humanity isn't a sword. We're the fire that forges or destroys everything it touches. Varith inclined his head. Then let us see what burns first. Cliffhanger. Outside the war hall, alarms began to wail. Not practice tones, battle sirens. Dominion fleets had entered orbit, loyalists ready to strike against Varith's perceived betrayal. Cain gripped the captured blade tighter, every instinct in his body sharpening. The council chamber had fractured, the Dominion itself was tearing apart, and humanity, scattered, broken, hunted, was suddenly at the center of it all. Varith turned toward the alarms, his voice calm as steel. The war for the Dominion begins tonight. Will humanity stand with me, Cain, or against me? Cain's answer caught in his throat. Behind the question lay not survival, but the fate of every human left alive in the galaxy. And the fire in his chest whispered the truth. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. The war hall shook as the first barrage struck the station. The alarms howled, the lights flickered, and fragments of stone and metal dust sifted down from the vaulted ceiling. Outside, Loyalist Dominion fleets had encircled the orbital spire, their weapons primed not against humans but against their own supreme commander. Elias Cain gripped the captured blade, its energy vibrating in his hands. He had fought aliens, machines, and extinction itself, but never had he stood at the fault line of an empire ready to split. Varitha's golden eyes remained steady, even as the room shuddered around them. They will not stop, Cain said, his voice low but carrying. They'll bury you for bowing to me. And if I stand beside you, they'll bury me too. Varitha's reply was calm, deliberate. Or we burn them first. The officers in the war hall erupted into argument. Some demanded immediate retreat, others pressed for open battle. A few glanced toward Cain, their gazes heavy with something more dangerous than hatred, calculation. The choice of fire. Cain moved toward the war table. The galactic map still shimmered, red banners blinking across occupied systems. But blue pulses flashed brighter now, resistance signals. They were faint, scattered but alive. You want humanity as your weapon, Cain said, voice sharp. But understand this, we don't fight for thrones. We fight for each other. You want my people at your side, then this isn't about saving your empire. It's about tearing down the chains choking the galaxy. The crystalline officer from earlier sneered. Listen to him. He speaks of rebellion. If you ally with this animal, you invite chaos into the heart of the Dominion. Cain slammed the blade into the table, its energy searing a deep scar across the map. Sparks danced across the projection. His eyes locked on the officer, unyielding. Chaos is already here. Dominion fleets orbit your skies, your council fractures, and your empire trembles because a single human refused to kneel. You don't fear me, you fear what I awaken. The chamber fell silent. Even those who despised him could not deny the truth. The first strike. The spire groaned as another salvo hit. This time, the walls cracked, and a support beam split open above the tiers. Smoke rolled in, acrid and thick. Varith turned, voice like a war horn. Arm the defense batteries. Prepare the fleets. If they want my command, they will fight me for it. Officers scattered, some to rally ships, others to send hidden transmissions. The fracture was now open rebellion. Cain moved to follow, but Varith caught his arm. You asked what side I am on. Understand this, Dominion unity is dead. If I fall, the Empire fractures into warlords. And humanity, scattered as it is, will be crushed in the crossfire. Fight beside me now, and you can reshape what comes after. Cain held his gaze. And when your empire is rebuilt, what then? Do humans get a seat, or a leash? For the first time, Varitha's expression cracked. Not hesitation, but respect. That depends on whether you prove yourself a commander, or only a symbol. The boarding. The chamber doors burst open. Loyalist soldiers stormed in, weapons blazing. Bolts of violet energy streaked across the hall, cutting down one officer instantly. Cain dove behind the war table, sparks burning his cheek as shots ripped past. He rolled out, swinging the captured blade. The first soldier fell in two pieces, armor hissing as molten edges split. Another lunged. Cain hooked the chain around its arm, wrenched it down, and drove the blade through its chest. Varith fought beside him with a predator's grace, claws carving through enemies like razors. The sight of human and commander fighting as one froze the loyalists long enough for Karzul, the horned general Cain had once beaten, to charge in with a bellow, axe cleaving the air. Council Hall is lost! Karzul roared. We take the fight to the docks! The escape. The survivors carved a path through corridors now choked with smoke and fire. Kane's ribs screamed with every breath, his vision blurred from blood loss, but he pressed forward. This wasn't just escape, it was survival of an idea. If he fell here, the spark would die with him. At the docking bay, chaos reigned. Loyalist ships strafed the outer hulls, while Varitha's forces scrambled to launch. Kane spotted a transport, small, battered, but armed. "We take that," Kane said. Carzel grinned. "At last, a human makes sense." They barreled aboard, engines roaring to life as the bay doors opened to the stars. The battlefield beyond was a storm. Dominion ships tearing at each other, the Empire cannibalizing itself in real time. The broadcast. As the ship broke free, Varith moved to the comms console. "Every Dominion frequency is listening. They must see what we fight for." Kane hesitated, then stepped beside him. His voice carried across the galaxy, raw and unflinching. "You call us broken. You call us finished. But today you kneel before us. Humanity does not die in silence, we rise in fire. If you fear that, then know this, we are not alone anymore. Every world you've crushed, every people you've enslaved, they will rise too. And when they do, we'll be there beside them." The transmission cut through battle noise, reaching fleets, colonies, and hidden cells across the stars. For a heartbeat, the war paused, not because of peace, but because fear and hope struck at once. The twist. Kane turned from the console, breath ragged. Varys studied him, unreadable. Then the commander spoke softly, almost a whisper. "You've doomed me, human. By standing with me, you've made me a traitor to half my empire. And by kneeling to you, I've made myself your shadow." Kane's jaw tightened. "I never asked for your kneeling." "No," Varys said. "But the galaxy saw it. And now, every Dominion officer knows what I know. Humanity is not prey. They are the rival we cannot erase. And one day, Kane, you'll have to decide whether you fight us or lead us." Kane's grip on the blade tightened. He wanted to deny it, to spit back that humanity would never bend. But deep inside, he knew the truth. The galaxy had shifted. Humanity was no longer a forgotten ember. They were aflame, and flames spread. Outside the viewport, the Dominion fleets tore into each other, loyalists against reformists, empire collapsing into war. Kane stared into the firestorm and whispered to himself. "We didn't win. Not yet. But the galaxy just remembered our name." Ending image. The transport cut through debris, its engines burning bright against the void. Behind it, an empire fractured. Ahead, a galaxy waited, trembling. And Elias Kane, soldier of a dead Earth, stood not as a prisoner, not as a victim, but as the man who had forced the supreme commander of the Dominion to bow. What came next would decide everything.